So here we got Jacob from John HQ.
I'm going to try to pronounce my last name.
No, I actually thought about doing it, but I was like, Tsypkin.
It's close enough.
Close enough, right, yeah. You can't pronounce my name either, so it's
probably
cool.
true.
So interview about how you got into sports, starting your own gym, and training for CrossFit. So just a short introduction about yourself, why you got into sports and then CrossFit in particular.
Sure. So pretty much my entire athletic background was martial arts. I started in Tung Sudo, which is a Korean form of karate, very young. And in my teens, around 15, I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I asked my coach at the time for recommendations to get in shape for a tournament. This was around, the tournament was in October of 2005, it was the US Open. And he told me to check out CrossFit.com. And this was a guy named Mike Weaver, who was one of the trainers at CrossFit HQ back in the day. So I checked it out, and I looked at it, and then he gave me a workout to do, and it was basically Barbara light. So Barbara is 5 rounds, 20 pull-ups, 30 push-ups, 40 sit-ups, 50 squats with a 3-minute rest in between. He just knocked 10 reps off each of those. I did the pull-ups strict because I didn't know how to kip, and I thought I was going to die. I went to jiu-jitsu that night, and the other coach who was there was like mad at me because I could barely do the warm-up. I was so tired. Did the workouts a few times, and then but didn't really get consistent until March of 2006 when I got injured in martial arts. I had been out for maybe 2 months, and I just felt really out of shape, and I went back to CrossFit and started doing it really consistently and never looked back.
Right, so after that you decided to just want to start your own place?
Well, I got a job at a gym on the East Coast, running their CrossFit affiliate. And they had a martial arts school as well, a jiu-jitsu and MMA school, so I helped condition their athletes, and I ran their CrossFit program. I did that for about 6 months, and I realized I was not well suited to working for people who were not me. So moved home and opened my own gym in July of 2008.
And that was just a CrossFit gym? How did you go about actually starting it, just from the very start of it? There's some legal issues and things, and I'm sure you made somewhat of a plan for it?
No.
No, okay.
Not really. I mean, we had about 900 pounds of dumbbells and 4 pairs of gymnastics rings. In the first 3 months, we offered classes every day, 5 days a week, 4 classes a day. Actually, 6 days, but it's Saturday morning. And we would go to various parks until we got kicked out. We were in front of my parents' house for a while. We were on a soccer field. But we offered free classes 4 times a day, and then after about 3 months of that, we had enough people that we could afford to get a space. So it was a tiny little space, probably about 600 square feet of actual training space, and then 200 square feet that was an office. We were in there for just over a year. Our next space was about 1,200 square feet. We were in there for maybe a year and a half. Our next space, just a year, was about 3,000 square feet, and now the space that the gym is currently in, I'm not at the gym any longer, but our final space is about 5,000 square feet, and the gym has been there since June of 2012. So coming up on 4 years.
Right. So how did the actual expansion of it go? Did it start really slowly, or did it take off pretty fast just from the free classes?
It took off pretty fast, and we got out of our first location really fast, right? We're there just over a year.
Yeah.
It was pretty fast up through the 3rd gym, and then we kind of had to move into a bigger space a little sooner than we wanted to, just because of some problems with our neighbors and our landlord. So then from then it was just steady growth. But definitely in the first 2 years, it was pretty quick.
Right. Any so what went wrong? What went good about it? I'm sure there's some ups and downs in actually doing this, and
sure.
How much time does it actually take up to do such a thing? I've now spoken to people who say it's 14, 15 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week.
Yeah, and it's nonstop. There's no off switch. It's just I would even hesitate to put a time on it for how much I was working in a given day or a given week, because it's just constant. It's owning a business, especially a business like a gym, is kind of like having a kid. It just in the sense that you can't not be there to take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. So I mean, it was just constant. I have no regrets about it. I mean, it was a fantastic thing. I'm very happy I did it. It was one of the proudest things I've ever done in my life. It's very hard. There's no doubt about that. And I don't mean that to say to discourage anybody, and you can certainly do very well with it. Personally, I don't think I was very well suited to running a gym. I think there's a certain, I don't know if I'd say a personality type, just maybe a certain set of characteristics and habits and tendencies that lends itself well to that, and I didn't have it. So right. I was great at the coaching aspect and the programming aspect, but the day-to-day business of running a gym is just, I was not good at it.
Right. Did you ever find anyone, hire anyone to do that for you? Is that what you're doing now with the other gym kind of?
We had some help. My business partner certainly did more of that type of stuff. He handled taxes and all that. And we had, at various times, we kind of had employees who were in more of a management role, but generally speaking, not really. It was just us. Right.
And it's just been that ever since then?
Yeah, well, so we sold the gym a little over a year ago now. But I mean, the entire time that we owned it for close to 7 years, that's pretty much how it ran.
Right. Any things I want to do that sometime down the line, and we'll see whether or not I actually enjoy doing it. But for me, any tips you would say? I'm just starting out. Start small.
It's tough now, although assuming you'd be doing this in Denmark, maybe it's a different story.
Yeah.
Now, starting a CrossFit gym is pretty different, in my opinion, than it was when we opened up in 2008. In 2008, you could get away with dumbbells and gymnastics rings in a park. Now, you have to have a nicer facility, and it's tougher. The market's more saturated. It's obviously going to be harder. You probably need more startup capital. I mean, our total investment in the beginning of the gym, including our affiliate fees, dumbbells, gymnastics rings, and personal insurance and all that. I mean, we're talking a few grand. It's hard to do that now unless you're somewhere pretty isolated. We're in Southern California right now. I want to say there's 500 CrossFit affiliates within a 90-minute radius.
Wow.
You have to stand out, and programming and coaching are absolutely a huge part of that. But your facility matters.
Yeah.
In your case, if you're starting a gym in Denmark now, given CrossFit's pretty huge in Denmark now. I mean,
it's pretty big worldwide actually. So
yeah,
it may just be more like what we have out here, just kind of.
Sure. Well, I don't know about now, but a few years ago, Copenhagen was the starting point for CrossFit to really explode in Europe. I remember a few years ago there was CrossFit Copenhagen and CrossFit Butcher's Lab, and CrossFit Copenhagen had 800 members. Butcher's Lab had 500. I mean, for whatever reason, it just took off in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So maybe what I'm suggesting is not the case. Maybe you have to have a big space out there too now, a big nice space, but. To the extent possible, I think the best advice I can give you is start small and stay small until you're forced to grow. It may even be the case that now, as the market's becoming more and more saturated, one of the ways you can make yourself stand out is instead of going with a big space, just have a small, nice space, really limit your class sizes. I know at least a few people who run their entire affiliate sort of based on that premise where, they limit to 6 or 8 people a class, really refined coaching, maybe they do a little bit more personalization than other gyms do. So there's more than one way to go about it, but I guess that, don't expand beyond your, don't let your reach exceed your grasp, and have some kind of niche, whether it's a very specific niche like strength or weightlifting, or just having a niche that's hey, we're the gym that focuses on small size classes and all that kind of stuff. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, right. One of the things Alan told me against Sacramento was save up for an entire year in advance because you won't be making any money likely the first year.
Yeah, I think I took my first paycheck from the gym about, close to 2 years in.
Oh shit.
I made a little bit of money off of private sessions before that. It was very mild. I lived in our first 2 gyms, which sounds kind of cool. It's not. The first gym didn't even have a place we had that office space that was about 200 square feet.
Yeah.
And above the office was a storage area, kind of just like this one, but much smaller.
Yeah.
So I'm 5'6" and I couldn't even stand up all the way in that area. I would climb a ladder and it sucked. There's nothing fun about it. I showered every day at a friend's house and it's no good. But it's, I think that's sound advice. Save up for a year like you mean it. Live very, very much live very much within your means for a year. Put as much away as you can. I think that'll make your life a lot easier. Because I did not do that. I didn't know I was going to start a gym. It was kind of spur of the moment, like this is what I want to do, and I didn't want to wait. Maybe that was an unintelligent decision, but I think that's good advice. Put money away so that you can, and teach yourself to live very well within your means, so that you can not have the additional stress of just kind of sustaining yourself, along with the stress of opening a gym and putting everything together. For me, I was lucky. I had a lifelong friend who owns a construction company, and he let me work whatever hours I wanted to work with them. So I really lucked out where for quite a bit of the time I would run the gym in the morning. Like I would coach at 6 a.m. And then 7 a.m. when we added that class, I would work out for an hour. I would go to work for my friend for 4 to 5 hours, come back, work out again, and then coach all the evening classes. Which was like, it was a rough schedule, but it's whatever, right? Like you're going to have a rough schedule one way or the other. But I was also very, very lucky that I happened to know somebody who gave me that opportunity. If I had not lucked into that opportunity, I'm not sure that the gym wouldn't have face planted in the first year. Just because I wouldn't have been able to sustain myself. So definitely putting away money and maybe even having some kind of external source of income, even if it's just a few hours of work a week or working as a personal trainer at a regular gym or whatever, just to get a little bit of extra money coming in. I think despite the extra time that you have to invest, it'll probably reduce your overall stress because you're not freaking out about money this whole time.
Yeah. So like the last thing is, it's like pretty much all new gyms, they like fail with it the first year, as you mentioned. And is there anything, like, I'm sure you know a bunch of gym owners, is there anything you can like see a trend that they do differently than other gyms that kind of keep them in the business? Because I know some people want to almost like compete with other gyms, but that never seemed like the good way.
No, I really think that's a huge mistake. Not because there's anything wrong with competition, but because if you're focused on the other guy, you're not focusing on what you can be doing to make your facility better, to make your clientele happier. So I think that's it. Have a relentless tunnel vision focus on what can I do each day, each week, each month to make this place better. I'll also say I think a lot of people focus too much on getting new people in the door. Obviously that's important, but it's in the long term it's not really a winning strategy. You have to pay attention to the members you have. I think that's the single most important thing you can do, is you have to do everything you can to make those members happier. And as a result, what you're going to find is that the people who you already have, the things that they want and need are going to be very similar, if not identical, at least on average, to the other people who want to come in. So the better job you do of making sure those members have the facility they like, and they're getting the training that they want, and that they're getting maybe like access to resources, like having a nutritionist of some kind you refer people to, etc., etc. The more you do that, the more other people are going to be able to see that, and they're going to come in. But if you just focus on getting people in the door, you're going to lose focus on keeping them there, and I think that's a losing strategy in the long term in two ways. One is that it's just a constant stress, right? Like I have to get this many people in the door each month. That's tough. It's also that you're simply not going to be accomplishing what you want to accomplish as a gym owner. If I imagine most people get in the gym business because they're passionate about training, I think. Yeah, well, and they want to help people. They want to help people. And if you're too focused on just getting people in the door, it just becomes really difficult to put the focus that you can and should put into helping those people who are already there. Yeah, right. Well, next thing then is actual training for CrossFit. So, there's different approaches to it. I know some people just do something similar to strong lifts with like a 5-minute conditioning at the session twice a week, and they call that, training for CrossFit. Sure. To be clear, we're talking about CrossFit as the sport. Yeah, competitive. I don't care about the watts. So, what precisely is the question? So, I think there's a lot of confusion as to, what competitive CrossFit actually is. So, if you could actually define that first. Sure. So, I define competitive CrossFit and events like it as a multi-day, multimodal endurance sport. So, that has a few implications. Number one, the multi-day factor means that we need not only intra-event endurance, so you don't just need to be endurant during a particular event, but it means that you have to have the capacity to recover from event to event and day to day, depending on what the events are, and if we're talking about regionals or the games, That can be something like 7 scored events in 3 days, that's regionals, or the games is usually something like 13 scored events in 4 days, which is spread out across 5, or at least historically has been a day of competition on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the open division, the kind of main event.
Yeah.
The multimodal factor means that we have to be endurant across a long range of both like skill domains and fitness characteristics. So it means that you have to have classical type endurance, which simply means being able to repeat, we'll say it's to repeat a submaximal exertion, submaximal force over and over again. So the most classical example of endurance is running. But we're still talking about basically the same kind of thing if the workout is 60 minutes or 30 minutes of light clean and jerks and running and pull-ups. It shares a lot of the same qualities. Obviously, there are specific skills you have to deal with, but it's also a primarily aerobic driven, very, very similar event. But there's also a different type of endurance, which is that you have to have all these fitness characteristics developed to a certain level, right? So you have to be strong enough and fast enough, have to have big enough clean and jerk and a big enough deadlift. And those numbers aren't tremendously high. They're good, but I think the average clean and jerk at the games in 2015, I want to say, was 315 pounds for the men. Now that's a pretty big clean and jerk, but it's nothing crazy for dudes who on average weigh 195. It's a good lift, it's nothing nuts. But what those athletes must have is the ability to perform at close to maximal intensities under pretty severe both accumulated and acute fatigue. So you don't just have to be able to clean and jerk, we'll say for a male games athlete, let's say their best case scenario, absolute best clean and jerk average, like 340, 345. It's not enough to be able to do that, but you have to be able to hit 315 immediately after, or within an hour of doing some really grueling event, while you're also on the 3rd day of competition of doing similarly grueling events. So multimodal endurance has 2 components. One of them is simply being, having classical endurance, the ability to repeatedly perform submaximal efforts of a given skill. But we also have this slightly more unique type of endurance, certainly not entirely unique to this sport, right? You could see, obviously, for example, rugby players have to be able to be in an aerobic environment and still exert a lot of force and power. But you have to be able to sustain that intensity in a large variety of skills and fitness characteristics under a lot of fatigue.
Yeah. A lot of that as well comes down to learning how to pace yourself as well, right? Because I know some people promote quote-unquote speed work for CrossFit because they think that if you move it faster, you spend less time moving it and it will be easier in that sense. But
speed work in the sense of dynamic effort?
They're really trying to move the weights fast because,
I think that's backwards.
Yeah, I think, it's...
The whole point of speed work is to generate the highest amount, apply the max amount of force you can to a sub-maximal weight. So it's not going to be maximal force because you don't have enough time to develop that, but get as much force and power out of it as you can. With CrossFit, that's detrimental. If you have a workout with, let's say, 45 deadlifts with 315, let's say 315 is, or 65% of your max, just throwing out a number, making each of those reps as explosive and forceful as possible is a waste of energy. But to answer the primary question, pacing is really important, but I don't want to make it seem like you just have to figure out how to pace yourself. If you take a really strong athlete who has all these skill sets, like let's say you've got a good 500 meter row, and you've got a good 30 muscle ups for time, and you've got a big squat and deadlift and snatch and clean and jerk, that doesn't in and of itself tell me, if you just learn how to pace yourself, you're going to be able to do this. Well, there are still physiological characteristics you have to develop that will allow you to actually carry out that execution of pacing. And of course, there's pacing, but they're still moving fast, right? I can pace a workout to my abilities, and I'm not going to keep up with Rich Froning's abilities because he has better developed those particular physiological characteristics.
Right. So in your book you talk about splitting kind of the training into 4 different aspects. Mm-hmm. So you have just developing the energy systems, gymnastics, weightlifting, and strength basically.
Yeah.
If you had to rank them in order of importance it's hard to do, but say which one So like a lot of the
it can't be done.
It can't be done at all.
No, it just can't.
So in particular, so like a lot of the people who win at the games are, you know, say former gymnasts. So I feel like.
Well, that's true on the women's side, not on the men's side.
All right, right. Okay, see.
They're also, so this is, and this might not be as true now, but for a while it was a mixture of gymnastics and track and field. Having those two sports, your background, seemed to correlate well. I have a theory about the gymnastics side for the women, which is that it's not merely the skill set of gymnastics, it's that male athletes all do upper body work, right? Why don't male CrossFitters have to train the bench press? Well, because a lot of them came into CrossFit with a low to mid 300s bench press, right? Female athletes in many, many sports never really do serious weight training. They don't get big, strong, powerful upper bodies. They don't do pull-ups and bench press and dips and all that. So I feel that female gymnasts have not one, but two advantages. Obviously, they have the advantage of having developed certain skill sets, but it's not just that. It's that they have trained upper body strength to an extent that many female athletes have not. But it's not just gymnasts who do well, right? I mean, you got Sam Briggs, one of the best female CrossFitters in the world, has a straight-up endurance background. I don't think we're at a point now where we can say one of these domains is most important universally. It's fair to say that certain athletes should bias certain domains based on their abilities. And we can certainly observe some trends. But with that said, I don't think it's reasonable to put any one of those domains ahead of the others at this point.
Right. I mean, after all, it's like it is a sport of trade-offs, so you kind of have to...
Precisely.
What do you think, just loosely, are some good like strength standards for, say, strength and weightlifting and...
Strength numbers?
Yeah, and you know, like things you should be able to do gymnastics-wise and for the energy systems training. How fast you'd be able to run.
To be at what level of competition?
Just to be competitive, like to actually say make it to the games. Because that's getting harder and harder every year. I mean,
making it to the games. I mean, making it to the games is hard.
Yeah.
Like making it to regionals is pretty hard. Making it to the games is very, very difficult. I have the actual averages for weightlifting numbers somewhere, or at least estimated averages. I would say, I want to say that at the regionals events, in the snatch event in 2015, the average male snatch, so there are obviously some higher and lower, but I want to say it was something like 250, 255. I think that was the mean, not the median.
Yeah.
I want to say for women it was around 150 or 155. Clean and jerk, games athletes in the Open in 2014, average clean and jerk for men, I believe, again I'm doing this from memory so it might not be quite right, but I can get you the numbers later if you want. I want to say in the Open, the clean and jerk at the end of 15.1 and 15.1A, for men it was like 308 or 310 mean. For women, maybe like 205. So there's some ideas for you. There's some slight differences when you look at the clean and jerk event at the games, but in that range. So we'll say you better be able to, you for sure better be able to, as a male, consistently snatch in the mid 200s, consistently clean and jerk in the low 300s. That's what I'm saying is not maxes, but pretty much under any circumstances.
Yeah.
For women, we're probably talking a snatch in the mid 100s under any circumstances, and a clean and jerk in probably the high 100s under any circumstances.
Right, yeah. And then just strength. I've heard deadlift is about 500. Going past that point is really not gonna. That's the effort it takes to get
Sure. It's hard for me to say because So the three lifts that I use as my primary strength builders, the lifts that we kind of use as our benchmarks are back squat, push press, and deadlift. None of those have been tested. The last time the deadlift max, and it wasn't even a real max, was tested individually in the games was 2009. And that was a deadlift ladder which only went up, I say only went up to 505, but the guys who put it together expected nobody to finish it. A bunch of guys finished it. The numbers that I look for, I would say to be a games level athlete as a male, you probably need to have a low to mid 400 squat at least, a mid to high 200s push press, and then probably a low to mid 500s deadlift. There are some people who can get away with like a high 400s deadlift because the deadlift is, I think, a lift that some people are just, if you're not built for it, it's really hard. I have one guy who has a 475 squat and a 485 deadlift. He's got a long torso and short arms. When he deadlifts, he's got to pull the bar to his freaking belly button. So that certainly, and that can happen. And that can happen with any of these lifts, right? There's outliers. But I'd say those are safe averages. For women, probably a mid to high 200s back squat, a high mid to high 100s push press. I think we're getting past the point where, like, I'm not convinced like a 140 push press is going to cut it. I'd say you need to be at least probably 165, 160, somewhere in there. And then a low to mid 300s deadlift at least, maybe even like high low. We'll say at least 325 probably for women. And again, there's going to be outliers, but I'd say those are safe averages for right now.
Right.